My guest today says, when it comes to abortion, they lied to us. I'm Monica Schmelter. Welcome to Bridges, where we bring you hope for the journey. Today we're going to be talking about abortion and abortion recovery. And my guest today is Victoria Robinson. And Victoria, so good to have you again.
It is so good to be back.
Yeah, so we've let too much time go by. But you really are very passionate about the subject of abortion and abortion recovery and trauma recovery. And these books with the title They Lied to Us are just dear to my heart, because really, when abortion became like legal and an option, it was really put out there as, you know, this is just a choice. Yeah. It's easy, it's legal, and there are no ramifications. Is that true?
It's a lie. And that's why I appropriately named the books They Lied to Us, because they did feed our society a lie that abortion was like nothing more than getting a tooth pulled or having a tumor removed. They didn't talk about the psychological effects. They didn't talk about the spiritual effects. And it was just, let's be honest, became a huge money-making business. So passing out contraceptives to children that they knew wouldn't use them was also good for their business, because these kids would get pregnant, come to their abortion mills and pay for abortions. And then I deal with the ramifications, as you've said, the after effects of the trauma from choosing abortion.
Right. And I noticed that when it came to abortion, they didn't even call it surgery or termination. It was just called a procedure.
Yes.
And so it was softened in every which way. And then of course it wasn't till years later that people began to realize that actually women and men started experiencing like depression and all of these after effects of that trauma, of realizing, oh my goodness, like what have I done?
It's true. And what is unfortunate is that these same people, even today, Monica, are searching out, am I depressed? Am I smothering my children? Have I become this helicopter parent? Am I having issues with committing to someone, and et cetera, whether it's drug or alcohol addiction? Do they stem from my choice of making an abortion, whether it was decades ago or 6 months ago or whenever the case is? And they're learning online, it has no correlation, because the pro-abortion side needs them to believe the lie, to continue the lie that, well, there's something else wrong with you. It could not possibly be the abortion that you chose, because people don't have effects from choosing abortion, and it's simply not true.
And you know this because really you have worked in this field for years and are still, with Reassemble Life, are working with couples, men and women who are realizing that it's affecting their marriages, their relationships, their lives. And tell me about the ways that it's doing that.
Well, I chose abortion, unfortunately, as you know, Monica, over 37 years ago, and it almost destroyed my life. And I was one of those people who believed the lie that there was nothing there because I was 6 weeks pregnant. There's nothing more than a blob of tissue, a clump of cells. When you leave here, never think of it again. And when you're in a very vulnerable position as a woman in a crisis like that, an unplanned pregnancy, you tend to believe whatever someone tells you, especially when they're giving you the impression they care so much about you. But immediately upon taking the money from me to pay for my abortion, it was $350 cash. She looked at me and said, "You don't get refunds here if you change your mind when you're on the table. So you can go now." It should have been a clue to me that she really didn't care.
Right.
So for 10 years after that, I lived with the guilt and the shame of choosing abortion. And I did change as a mother. I already had 2 children. I knew the outcome of a pregnancy, Monica. I was a single mother at the time. And when I said that to her, she said, "You'd be a really bad mom to bring another child into the world." So I believed everything I needed to believe, but because they were lies, as the truth started unfolding before my eyes through others, through getting pregnant with my 3rd daughter, who was a wanted child, that's when it hit me that I'd been lied to and that I'd made such a grave mistake, and that all of these post-abortion trauma, if you want to call them symptoms, were stemming from the choice of making abortion. Things like of choosing abortion, things like depression, as you've mentioned. I didn't struggle with alcohol or drug addiction, but I know multitudes of men and women who have. Some people have struggled with sex addiction. They just want to feel again. So they'll go out and become very promiscuous. Some women will want to replace the child they aborted, thinking this would be that child when we were all uniquely made.
Right.
So it's not the same child. It's just suicide thoughts, even committing suicide. There is a whole litany of a list of things that men and women have dealt with from choosing an abortion. So it is a complete lie to say there are no repercussions from choosing an abortion. We were not created to end the lives of our children.
No.
God did not create women to kill our own children. It's not natural.
Right.
We were made to nurture. Men were made to protect their children, Monica.
Yes.
So it's not natural for them to participate in an abortion. So when they come to the realization of what an abortion is, that's when all the trauma sets in.
And I've met many men who, after they're grown, look back on their life and think back to a girlfriend in high school or in college that they really just manipulated, right, coerced, and are just like, no, you're going to take this money, you're going to have an abortion, and like even his parents and her parents, and this girl, right, she feels under all this pressure because she's got to finish college and she's got to have this career, and so she folds and she does this, and everybody thinks that they're doing what's right for the long term. And they really just don't see the harm of this choice, but it comes back. I mean, I watched a grown man just sob and go back to that girl who is now a grown woman and say, I'm just so sorry. Like, I participated in this choice. I was a kid myself, but I'm still responsible. Like, I'm sorry that I asked you to do something that's so wrong.
When I called the father of my aborted child, when I wrote my first book, they lied to us and he recognized my voice. All I said was, hey, it's me. He began to weep. It had been over 10 years since we spoke, and he said, I've been waiting for this call for over a decade to beg you for forgiveness for what I made you do. I should have protected you and our child, and I failed you both. Can you ever forgive me? I've been in therapy 8 years dealing with this. So men are hurting too. It's not just women. And even whether they paid for it, manipulated, coerced, sometimes some of these men don't even know, Monica.
Yes.
They find out later their children were aborted. They are devastated because they come to that realization, like the woman who's post-abortive, I killed my own baby. It wasn't a blob of tissue. It was my baby.
Right. And some women don't realize that till they have a baby, right? Because they're not, they're just a few weeks pregnant. So they don't have that knowledge. It's their first pregnancy. But when they get pregnant later in life and they realize, oh my goodness.
Some are so deceived, Monica, that I've counseled them. They're driving to the abortion clinic, convinced this is the best choice, while their child in the womb is kicking them. Because we allow abortion in this country after birth.
Yes, we do.
So these women have a harder time reconciling that fact. But that's how manipulated and blind they are. They're not bad people.
No.
That into believing this is the right choice, the best choice, and it's legal, so it can't be harmful.
Right. Because I've heard people say things like, Victoria, well, they choose abortion because it's convenient. They choose abortion because they're materialistic. And I just really, that's just not what I think. I think that because it's legal and because of the way that people think, that they choose it because it's legal, so therefore they think it's okay. And many times people are in a crisis and they're very afraid. It's not because it's convenient, they're scared to death.
They are.
And they think, I'm not educated enough, I'll never be able to have a good enough job, I don't know what my parents will think. Some of their husbands are saying, I'm gonna leave you. I mean, there's a lot of trauma and crisis that people don't know about on the outside, and they judge that as convenient and materialistic, and sometimes there's a backstory that's just really awful.
Yes.
And we can be really rough on these people, And sometimes there's a lot of suffering with that. And I'm not saying the choice is okay.
Right.
Because it's not.
I hear exactly what you're saying.
It's not okay. I just have compassion for some of the situations that people find themselves in, and they've been lied to.
They have.
So because they've been lied to, they think, this is the best decision I can make in this awful circumstance.
It is, and if more people would rise up and see a young woman who's in a crisis, who's in an unplanned pregnancy, she's unmarried, or she is married and she's turning to the church or turning to someone saying, help me, I don't want to do this, but they're saying it's probably for the best. What is she? Of course she's going to think it's for the best. One after another, lie after lie convinces her it's the right thing. Even then, even when she's driving to the abortion clinic, like I was thinking, what am I doing? This doesn't feel right. But everybody is saying it's the best thing. So we just need to step up and do more for these women as well. I believe if they had support from the boyfriend, the husband, even the community, more of them would not choose abortion.
Yes. And if we got that message out there, that like there are other things, there are resources, there are other ways and means, even if that's to place the baby for adoption. You know, there are so many other options other than abortion, but we really haven't presented those options and helped people see that there are other choices other than abortion, and that we want to be helpful, not judgmental.
Absolutely, and we've got a pro-abortion side that's pushing the narrative that let's shout out our abortions. Let's celebrate being career woman. I couldn't have done X, Y, Z had I had that child. What message does that send to the children they've had or they will have in the future? You're lucky you were born in this time because I would have aborted you. Had
It's ridiculous.
You know, if you had been conceived 10 years ago when my career was beginning. It's absolutely asinine, but it's lie after lie. Everything you just said, Monica, is lie after lie after lie after lie. That we tend to believe what we need to believe when we're in a crisis.
Yeah.
And that's why we've got to continue to speak the truth.
Right, right. Because every child, every life is a blessing. God authors life. And He'll help us if we'll honor His word. He'll help us walk through that, however that needs to be. And our message needs to be full of life and full of love, and really extending a hand to these young women, middle-aged women, like whatever it needs to be.
Yes, absolutely. We have to keep getting the message out about the truth.
Yes.
About what an abortion is and what it isn't.
Yes, exactly.
Whether they're Christian or not. As a Christian, I've always found it an oxymoron and a contradiction for a Christian to say they are pro-abortion. That's
the two do not
ludicrous to me.
coexist.
They do not.
We've got to take a break.
Okay.
I want you to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment right here on Bridges.
Don't give in. God's word says you're an overcomer. If you hadn't done blah, 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 this wouldn't have happened. And let me say this to you. If you think that you are in a mess of your own making, you are still an overcomer. When that temptation comes, you want to make sure that you are dressed for battle. Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor so you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. It takes training. It takes discipline. And so when you're fighting that good fight of the faith, you take your story, whatever it is, and you saturate it in faith, and you fight for it.
Visit monicaschmelter.com to schedule Monica to speak at your next event.
So today on Bridges, we are talking about the deception, the lies surrounding abortion, and how we really need to get the truth out about how God is all about life. And Victoria, you've been talking about how we really need to get the truth out and change the messaging that abortion is not okay. We both do not understand how a Christian can say that they are pro-abortion.
That's laughable to me.
Yeah,
it's absolutely laughable to me.
It just doesn't make sense.
No.
God is the author of all life. And life is always a blessing, regardless of whatever the circumstances are. And I know that many women have had abortion because it's legal and have been in crisis and have made choices that most of the time later come to haunt them
Yes.
and bring guilt and shame. And I'm all about wanting to see that guilt and that shame redeemed and
Yes.
restored, and seeing that woman and that man made whole. And because of what you've been through, that's something that you've really stepped in that place to see that happen for others as it's happened for you.
Yeah.
Tell us about the reassemble retreats that you do.
So I went through a retreat. It wasn't called Reassemble there because I founded Reassemble just 3.5 years ago. But 28 years ago, I went through a retreat. It was the first of its kind in a weekend model, strictly for abortion recovery. It was specific to abortion recovery. It's a Bible study that Linda Cochran wrote, who's an RN, and she had several abortions. And she wrote this study, I think, 6 months after she accepted Christ, because she found nothing to help her deal with her abortion past. So I went through the very first weekend model in Greenville, South Carolina, and it changed my life. It was 10 years post-abortion. I had been living in all that guilt, shame, trauma, getting involved in relationships I shouldn't have because I thought I deserved them. I became this helicopter mother to my children because I was so afraid God was going to punish me and take one of them for what I'd done. All of those things that a post-abortive woman experiences. And I heard about this retreat. So I went through it, changed my life. On that Thursday night when I arrived, Monica, I said to the two facilitators, Carolyn and Trina, I'm here. How you're going to help me in 3.5 days is beyond my comprehension, but I'm here, so have at it.
Yeah.
I told them I had begged God to forgive me, but never felt forgiven, although that was my own mindset. Of course,
Right.
He had forgiven me.
Yes.
And they just said, well, we're just glad you're here. So on Sunday, when it was over, we stay together. You stay together the whole time. You're either at an Airbnb, a bed and breakfast, a hotel, but you're together this entire time, and you're having group sessions as you're going through this study. On Sunday at noon, when it was over, I went to those same two women. I could not contain myself, and I said, you must teach me to do for others what you just did for me. Every woman who's had an abortion needs to know that this help is available to them because I know what they're walking through. So they did. They mentored me, they trained me, and I've been doing these retreats now ever since. So this is my 28th year. I started Reassemble 3.5 years ago because I wanted to do full-time abortion recovery. I've been doing abortion recovery all of these years as a pregnancy center CEO. But then I knew the Lord was telling me that the need is getting greater, especially since Roe was overturned. I have seen more people reach out to me asking for help because they're that word triggered, as everybody uses. It's constantly on their mind because it's being talked about everywhere. So the retreats I do are the same ones I went through, changed them up to make them my own now. And I am doing 6 to 8 a year. Wow. They're always full. I cannot keep up with the demand. And now, Monica, I'm training pregnancy resource centers across the country to do these same retreats so that I can multiply what I'm doing in my efforts. There are a lot of other abortion recoveries out there, not as many as we need, but it's been phenomenal. So now I don't just do women's retreats. I now started doing men's retreats. And I just did my first couples retreat in the last couple months.
You know, when I hear you say you do men's retreats, in a way that kind of surprises me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that a man would come.
Well, it was full, and I'll tell you this, when I felt led to do the men's, I had 2 separate pastors who I highly respect say to me at 2 different events, why aren't you doing men's retreats like your women's retreats? And I said, well, because I'm not staying the weekend with a bunch of men. I mean, I'm a single woman. That's not appropriate. And they both said, well, of course you wouldn't, but you have the men that assist you because I do have men that help with that. Yeah. You can stay off campus, but you need to be leading the sessions because, Victoria, you represent the women they hurt through their abortion experience. Yeah. So on that Thursday, when I did the first men's retreat last year, that was the first one, on the way there, Monica, that entire day, I was having it out with the Lord. I was like, why did I agree to this? Men don't even talk. I mean, what am I going to do? Stare at them all weekend? They're going to stare at me and I'm going to be doing all the, I mean,
I would be thinking that too.
I was like, Lord, one and done. This is it. I'm not doing this again. Well, on Sunday, first of all, the first night, Thursday night, those men started talking and sharing their stories. They didn't shut up the whole weekend. Monica, they never shut up. They were flooding with emotion, wanted to get their stories out. One man said, 46 years, 10 months, and maybe 7 days. It was something like that. He said, that's how long it's been for me. And do you know how many people know about it? Those of you in this room. And he said, it has wrecked my life. And so by Sunday, the men are all sitting around. They didn't know about my conversation on Thursday about, this is it, Lord, one and done. I'm not doing this again. I mean, I felt sick to my stomach that whole day. These men looked at me and said, you cannot ever stop doing these men's retreats. If you hadn't been leading it, I would have never opened up the way I have. I felt safe, and I'm going home to my wife a better husband and a better father to my children. This has radically changed my life. One man had been a pastor. He wasn't anymore, had 2 abortions in his past. He said, I always felt like a fraud in my own church, in my own pulpit, because I had never shared my abortion stories. And that's what I believe took me out of ministry. I'm telling you, pastors, bring someone in to talk about this issue. It doesn't have to be me, but I am available, because they're sitting in your churches, 1 out of 4 women, and men are sitting in your churches that have participated or had an abortion, and they're desperate to know God loves them and there's help for them. So I won't ever stop doing men's retreats. And now apparently the Lord's saying you're doing couples too.
So it wasn't one and done. So you were all wrong about that. Okay, so couples retreats. Would this be like a couple who maybe when they were dating had an abortion, or while they were married decided
the prerequisite to come to the couples retreat is you aborted your own biological child together.
Between that couple.
So I just had one 2 months ago, and one of the couples, they've been married for 46 years. They wanted to hide the sin that they'd been having sex before they got married from their families. They were almost 5 months pregnant, Monica, married, and they went together to the abortion clinic. They did not ever tell anyone. They didn't even talk about it. They went through the couples retreat, and their marriage of 46 years was radically transformed because they both looked at each other several times and said, wait, you've thought that? I didn't know you thought that. I've thought that it was, I just sat back and said, I can't believe I get to be part of this, Lord. Thank you. What a blessing to watch him do what he does.
You know, I think sometimes people don't realize the walls that guilt and shame and regret build, and silence, and people suffer in silence.
It's a deadly killer.
You know, and the power of sin is in the secrecy. And I don't think that means that we need to shout all the things that we've done from the rooftops or put it on social media. I agree. I'm not all about that. But in a safe space, it can be very healing to share.
And what's more safer than your marriage? That's what it should be, your marriage.
And it sounds like that couple, you can understand 46 years ago, they were scared to death.
And all of the couples left on Sunday with different marriages. They said to me, not only has this weekend transformed me personally, from not just the abortion experience, from so many other things I've been carrying, it has transformed our marriage. So what I saw happen in the couples retreat, Monica, that's different than the men and women, the separate ones, which they all have, they're so significant, is that these couples experience something together that they now can walk out and they get it.
You know, CTN has that show Real Life. You've been on it. And I saw a couple, they were telling their story, and while they were married, they chose abortion. And they went through some post-abortive recovery workshop. And she had hid it from, I mean, they both knew about the abortion, but in her heart, she blamed him. Even though they both participated in the decision, she blamed him, and that had kept a distance. Like, in her heart, she just thought he was more responsible than her. And they got that straight in that recovery
So
workshop.
did these couples, same thing. They were blaming each other for things, didn't understand things. One of the women stood up in front of her husband. She was very hard and looked at him and said, please forgive me that I have hated you all these years over this. And forgive me that you have been so patient to stay through this with me. And he said, because I love you. And I knew where it was coming from. So they walked out different people and a different couple. So I love how the Lord's using Reassemble to reach people, and I'm praying that this will be what I'll do till the day I die.
Well, I look at, these books, they lied to us. And how this deception, right, is stealing from people and stealing from them all their lives.
Yes.
That sinful choice, that dark choice that's put out there as just an easy fix,
Yeah.
steals from them that day and the rest of their lives if they don't get help to recover.
Absolutely, and the help's available, and that's my heart is for, I will always fight for the unborn. I will always counsel a woman who's considering an abortion to tell her the truth about it and what she's going to face. But we've got to also remember Christ did not just die for these unborn children. He died for these parents as well.
Yes.
And they need to be walking in complete freedom and restoration and reconciliation.
Yes.
And pastors need to understand they've got some incredible warriors sitting in their church who are just longing for them to say something about this, because when they don't, they're internalizing that to mean it is the one sin God doesn't forgive because my own pastor won't talk about it.
Right, and I've heard people say that. It's the most heinous sin that there is. Well, the blood of Jesus covers it all. So we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much for coming today,
Thank you so much for having me.
Victoria. Thank you so much for watching Bridges today. If you go to bridgeswithmonica.com, we'll have show notes from today, tools and resources, but I do thank you so much for joining me today. We'll have more hope for the journey in just a moment.
Life can be hard and days can be long. So if you're looking for hope for the journey, monicaschmelter.com is a great place to get started. On monicaschmelter.com, you'll find Monica's teachings on demand. And if you're looking to really grow your faith, you'll find online extras are available with every teaching. So don't wait another day. Get started now at monicaschmelter.com and you will find hope for the journey.
If you enjoy watching Bridges, you can join Monica on Facebook for all the extras. Just visit Facebook and search for Monica Schmelter TV. At Monica Schmelter TV, you'll get a look behind the scenes. You'll learn secrets from the studio, and you'll be among the first to know what's coming up next on Bridges. Best of all, you can connect with Monica for prayer and share what topics you'd most like to see on Bridges. Monica would love to connect with you.
Here are some ways to help you hold on to hope when times are tough. As best you can, slow down the pace of your life. Practice gratitude. Find some things that you're thankful for. Plan some things that you can look forward to. Find a community of faith so that you're not so isolated. Always remember Romans 8:28, that God promises to work everything for our good when we love Him and when we are called according to His purpose. Well, that's it for today, and I will see you next time with more hope for the journey.